Hello everyone, this is Spider with a preview of how the world previewer or seed previewer is going to work. So let's dive directly into it. When you create a new world, you get this extra preview button. Let's rename the seed to, let's say, testing world with a couple extra stuff, and you can set in your seed into here. Let's say for example, you can also set things like amplified or customized and all these things that you want, or even turn on the bonus chest and all these things. And then you hit the preview button. It's not required to set any of these settings, but once you hit them, you get the seed applied into here. If you don't like the seed, for example, you can hit random and it generates a random for you. That seed will not be applied if you hit random or just type in. You have to actually hit apply. And then the seed is applied. The generator knows, okay, this is how we're going to have this wall generated, but it doesn't start yet because it has no, you didn't tell it to start generating yet. The next thing that you can set is the size that you can set on the slider directly below. And that allows you to decide how big the world is going to be. And since I got a couple of requests, I also added a tooltip to this button, which basically shows you the size and in blocks, how big the world is going to be in total with that generation option. How much RAM usage you expect while the generation is running on the startup. That will go down over time. How much GPU or GPU memory is being used for the texture, because I have to display it somehow. And then the hard drive usage, which basically tells you this is how big it's going to be, and also how much the texture itself uses, because I had to remove the texture completely from the RAM, else it would be like directly on top of your RAM, and I had to find a way to do it. This, by the way, updates live as you move the slider around. The slider doesn't update itself, the world size. You actually have to hit apply size, then it will do that. And as you can see, the largest world that the Chunk Pregenerator allows you to pre-generate on seed preview is around 32,000 blocks, which is 31 gigabytes of memory plus the 5 GB on top of that for the texture. If it would stay in RAM, it's 3 times the size, but thanks to a couple optimizations, it only loads these extra data up if they get saved or written to the texture. So it's only temporary and an increase, and I try to keep it as low as possible. So let's set it to a reasonable size, let's say 100 chunks, because that's the default size and it's actually quite big. Next, you have the option for add post and terrain. The terrain button says to you if you want to have it only generating terrain in your preview. If that's the case, the add post button stays free for you, because it doesn't generate trees, ores, or anything else. It just generates the terrain and the biomes. It's defaulted to that because if you're trying to find a seed or something, terrain generation is like a lot faster, and if you go into modded stuff, it goes tenfold faster. Like, there's a reason for that, especially if the mods add terrain generation and all that stuff. That takes a lot of time, memory, and all these things. That's why it's defaulting to terrain if you want to have it, and if you like your seed, you finish it up, and then you say add the post-processing of things. Then chunk cascading is also not really big of an issue or something like that. But if you click on it, you get terrain and post. It does them both on the same time. Then the generation, how it generates things, is also a tiny bit different. But we stay at terrain. Then you have your start and stop button. And this is basically starting the generation or stopping it. Then you have your speed control, which says how many milliseconds per game tick the server gets to generate stuff. The tooltip says anything above 200 milliseconds makes no sense at all. That's true for most cases. In my case, it's not, because I have some things disabled and enabled, and It's a dev version, let's say it like that. But usually if you go above 250 milliseconds, unless you know what you're doing, it makes no sense to go higher, because the server has also to generate extra things and also keep track of block updates and all of these things. And if you go too high, these things pile up and cause massive lag issues, which slow down the generation itself. So 250 milliseconds is fine. You get the optimal speed and also the safety from the server side without blocking stuff up. Mods have still time to calculate things, so things still can happen, and that's the idea. The overlays are how, for the map view, how the map is displayed. Slime chunks, if there's a slime chunk, then it will display it. And structures shows you every single structure. I will go show that. We will do a generation. But this is how the GUI works. If you're just a single player and want a decent world, 3,200 blocks by 3,200 blocks were on the IC2 Classic testing server when this mod was actually created. Back then was more than enough to keep 10 players with enough world size. So the default is set so you have enough room to play with, and you can just hit start and look if you like it. If you don't like it, you hit stop and change the seed to a new one and apply that seed and then start it. So what will happen is now all these buttons are disabled because the world generation has started. You can stop it, change the seed, and then apply the seed, and then the texture that's already generated and the world that's also already generated gets deleted, the new seed gets created, the new folder and files get created, and then you're fine with it. Also, the world that is generated in here is in its own folder, which is separate from each name. So if something happens or any issues arise, it's in there. And the folder does not get deleted if the game crashes, or if you want to keep the world, it doesn't delete it, it adjusts things. If the game decides to crash and you go back into the preview folder, world preview with a new seed, it will delete the existing preview folder, but only if you open the preview UI. The idea behind that is that the world pre-generator or seed previewer, how you want to call it, doesn't create new files and add up and add up and add up and add up. It's meant for you have one folder dedicated to this. If you want to keep it, it gets renamed to the folder name that was suggested to you by the main screen that Minecraft uses, and then you can just use it. If the game crashes, you go into your world and just rename the folder, and then you're also fine. Just make sure you check if the texture, which is it's called map data, is also deleted. If that's not the case, you get a bit of extra memory usage from that seed, but again, it's only a small amount. In this case, it's like 50 megabytes more. Barely anything noticeable. And as you can see, the world is already generating. It's going actually quite fast. And as you can see, you have a live feed at the bottom, how much is already generated, and at the top, how much memory is being used, and also an extra button, which is called GC. That button forces Java to clean up memory if there's a memory leak and if it can fix it. You can click it, you can spam it once or two, the game will freeze for a second because Java has to clean up all its memory, but that is there if you have issues or something that you can actually work against it. Also stopping and just restarting would be fine. To give you an example, we're going to stop now the thing and we are almost done. If you were at the world or if you would any other world generator, including Forge, and hit then start again, it would start over and just check everything. But Chunk Pregen has a special optimization for generating things and to find out if something was already generated. And as you see, it took less than a second to catch up to the latest moment. There's a lot of optimizations that I have implemented over the year that this mod existed. A lot of rewrites and all these things. And as you can see, the world is now generated. Let's go into the previews. To explain a couple things, before I moved the texture data from RAM into files, this change from map view was instant. But thanks to the view, I got actually a tiny animation that I made in. So if you hit now the block view, it changes now to the foliage color, which basically is the color of grass, leaves, and other things, from what I understand. If you click again, you get the grass colors of the biomes, so you know how it's going to look like. And if you press again, you're back to the world. And you can hit Shift and do it backwards, so you don't have to do it. And that's how that looks like. Next thing is the slime chunks. As you can see, that's actually quite a bit. Every pixel there that you would see is actually a slime chunk. It's using the Minecraft vanilla code to check if it is there. It uses the same seed as a slime would check for if it could generate in there, but only slime chunk ways, not swamp biomes, else these swamp biomes would be visible too. Next thing is structures, which as you can see are not easy to see, but they are visible. If you do other overlays, some are easier to see, others not, depending. And these are there so you can see what it is. Then you hover over it, you see this is a village, and this is a temple, also a temple, also a temple. And also the stronghold. Each color for each type is defined by its name. So if the name would change, then it will also look a tiny bit different. It is based on the profiler from Minecraft. The color generation, for those who are interested to achieve such effect like that. But you can see there it is. And also, as you can see, I didn't speak about that. It shows you where you are in your mouse with the block coordinates and also which biome you are at. And if there's something interesting like a slime chunk, if we enable both, you can see it's a slime chunk there and also a village at the same time. It's a taiga biome and we're at block position 300. So as you can see, that's all the things that we do. Now, right now we only generated the terrain, but let's keep the world. And the new screen opens with your world only has terrain generated. Terrain generation only has a small performance improvement. Unless you want, you know what you're doing, please go back and add post, because usually when you use Chunk Pregenerator, you want also faster chunk loading and don't want to care about terrain generation itself. You want to get that done. So what we're going to do is now hit the add post button, and it will start the second generation. That will run a little bit differently. Before it was like row by row, and this type of generation uses a flood fill effect. That's based on how Minecraft saves its chunks. These tiny fragments that you can see while it generates these things here, these are actually chunk cascading from Minecraft and mods that would generate things. Right now I don't have terrain generation mods included, but yeah, that's all the things. For also those who are scared that there's a big hole in there and here's also a lot of holes in there, this is nothing to really worry about, because this map is based on when Minecraft saves a chunk. So the map only updates when Minecraft says, okay, save this chunk now to the disk. It will then update the data to my collector, and then it will repaint the texture based on where it is. So you don't need to worry that these holes will stay in there, as you can see in a second. Minecraft hasn't just caught up and saved all the chunks, and some chunks can't be saved for the reason that they're forced to stay loaded, and this chunk saving logic isn't keeping up right now. A chunk pre-generation takes a lot of resources. You have to take care of a lot of things. That's why a lot of other pre-generators aren't keeping up. So nothing to worry about. You have here a nice effect, and now we just wait a bit. Another thing is you can move the map around as you wish. You can even move away from it. You can zoom in as you want and go up to a block level, so you can see a top-down view of all the things. And you can stop these ad posts and continue later on it. It will just continue like the other version. You can see like this roofed forest. There are the mushrooms, and I'm just trying right now to get rid of time while this is going on. To go into biome color, you can see again here the mesa is clearly visible. You see the river, which is a river and also a mesa biome. Let's go into the normal view, and while you're actually updating the tool, changing the foliage, it won't show a tooltip because it can't read fast enough from the file. It's actually quite a bit of things. Yeah, and as you can see on top, the memory usage is staying strong at 600 megabytes, which is fine for loading this many chunks. There are always 1000 chunks cached, and then it saves them and continues. So we're basically done, but I want to see or show you how it's going to end. Let's hope that there's no recording fails. I tried to record this already a couple times, a lot shorter because I didn't talk, but this time I'm just waiting or wanting to do the whole step, so this could count also as a tutorial. Yeah, as you can see, there's still a tiny hole. These are already filling in because Minecraft is now saying, okay, we have these chunks that needs to be saved. This giant hole is the spawn. As you can see from the world positions, it's the spawn area right now, and that doesn't get saved until now. It takes quite a while until the spawn gets saved, but even if you would hit stop, it will automatically force save all the chunks that are there. This border is going to be generated also soon, and once it reaches the area at the top, it tries right now to do the generation at other places, and from what I've seen, it's also a bit that it's bottom left-handed in its generation. So just to show off a bit, you see the memory usage is actually quite a bit of rising, so I want to take care of that so it's not as big as before, and I hit GC and it's back down as normal. So this is actually really working, it's not just for show. As you can see, the chunks are generating, but you see a small border in here. These border chunks are not fully generated, they're partly generated. For the reason you need 2x2 chunks, and there is no 2x2 chunks in this area. For those who are also interested in why I didn't do a chunk rate or something like that, you have already a lot of pixels, like each block takes already 1 pixel. I can't really overlay much more on top of that. If I try to do that, I first add a lot of lag, like slime chunks add a lot of lag to render, or structures depending. I want to make sure that even low-level PCs, or potatoes, how they are being called frequently, can also use this UI and take care of all the effects. As you can see, the village that was being shown here is now clearly visible, and as you can see, Minecraft spawning box is actually quite fitting for the size that it's working with. Maybe a tiny bit not perfect, but yeah, as you can see, it's working. You see there's all these things. My idea before was also to save the blocks, so you could see which block you're hovering over from the top view, but I decided against that because there's no real need, and we're almost done. Like, we're missing only 100 chunks. And as you can see, the generation is finished. GC was applied. We can click it again if you want to, but there's no real need. And as you can see, generation finished. The world looks pretty decent. We have everything done, and now we're going to say keep the world. Now it says, are you sure your world is ready to keep? If that's the case, then you can hit continue. If not, then you can hit back, and we are finished, so we are going to continue. And there you have your world. We are going in. And as you can see, everything generates fine, quite fast even so. And now, since I enabled cheats, let's go to game mode 1 and fly a tiny bit around. As you can see, a ravine, the biomes are all already there. We're flying, savannas. So we're at the near spawn, the lava lakes. There's the dirt, the snow, and everything generated fine from what I've seen. Interestingly enough, we have something that's deeper here, maybe because of the gravel. Could be the case. But as you can see, well run smooth. I have no issues. My CPU usage is totally fine. If we are enabling the tracker, enable tracker UI. I need to. As you can see, it needs a second to update. You see the wallet generally runs at 6 milliseconds, 7 milliseconds. That's totally fine for moving that fast and loading chunks. And everything's totally working as intended, as you can see. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I hope you like this new feature that I was working on the past week and up till today. And for those who are watching the video as it comes out, the beta version that I made for it while I'm porting to the other versions is now out for the supporters. So if you decide to support me, thank you very much. For all others, the version comes out as soon as I port it to all Minecraft versions that Chunk Pregenerator supports, which should be only a couple days extra. So thank you for watching and have a nice time. Bye.